You never know in this industry where people are going to end up. Age versus potential for success of a startup. The likelihood that you will be successful is directly proportional to how old you are.
Hello everyone, I'm Batuhan from Mobidictum. Welcome to our Founders Stories. Today I have the founder and CEO of a mega studio, Adam Jaffe. He worked in the industry for more than 15 years, worked in the great companies like Playtika, Gem City, Social Point, and Deca Games. He is living in Barcelona, and today he's going to talk about his journey in the games industry. Adam, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Batu. Happy to be here.
So, 15 years in this roller coaster industry. Let's dive into how you started to your journey.
Yeah, so moved to Israel back in 2007, right after I graduated university, to do something completely unrelated to mobile gaming, to gaming in general, which was to play professional football, soccer, football, whatever you want to call it. Ended up signing a contract with a team from Toulon, but wasn't really I realized basically I wasn't going to be Messi. I wasn't really going to make a living at it, so I needed to get a job, and one of the first jobs I was able to get was working in a casino as an affiliate manager, basically because I could speak English, and yeah, that was and I had some marketing degree from my university, which was super helpful. And sort of from there, kind of progressed, had met some friends, kind of helped me out get another job. And then in 2011, I was working for, maybe it was 2010, end of 2010, beginning of 2011, I was working for a company called Mattomi. Ended up getting fired, but my boss was also a good friend of mine. And he basically said, called me up one day, goes, Adam, don't sign with any companies until you meet this company. I just met them at a conference. This guy's looking for a head of user acquisition, have somebody to help kind of start the marketing department. And that guy was Robert Entrecol, the current CEO and founder of Playtika. And yeah, that was it. I walked into his office. It was tiny, like it looked like 40 square meter building. I was number 10. And I just remember thinking, like, this is what I want to do. I want to work in gaming. I want to be part of this, this crazy new industry. And I just told him, I said, listen, don't pay me, I'll work for free. I was like 26 at the time, 25. I mean, it was way younger than what they probably were looking for in terms of experience. But, I'm like, I'll bust my ass. I'll do whatever it takes. And then you tell me what you think I'm worth in the end. Yeah, the rest is history. So
that is a very interesting approach. Like, you pay, what's my word? And did they pay you?
And it worked. Yeah, of course. They paid me what in 2011 was a livable wage in Israel, although today it would probably would make me poor. But yeah, I mean, it was, I think it taught me a good lesson early on in my career that, right, if you really believe that you can put value on the table, then be prepared to put it out there. I think a lot of people today have this expectation of what needs to come. I need this amount of money, I need to earn this, I need to earn that. And if you can do it, if you can have confidence in yourself to kind of put yourself out there, then people will recognize that. And I think that was my kind of start in the space with Playtika. And I was there for 2.5 years, basically running all the marketing. I launched Slotomania on mobile. I was in charge of also on the website as well. So lots and lots of things.
You were number 10. When you left, how many people did they have?
Oh man, I think we were probably close to like maybe 500 or 600 people by the time I left, maybe even more. We'd already acquired a couple of studios at that point, and we had offices in Vinnytsia, in Belarus, in Santa Monica. So we were expanding pretty rapidly at that time.
Well, when you entered the office, you realized that you like to do this, but did you imagine that the company will grow at that pace eventually?
Obviously, first day had no idea about the business, but pretty quickly, especially in those early days, obviously it was Facebook. The growth was pretty staggering. We were generating tons and tons of technically they were installs, but plays on Facebook. And also we were really the first kind of social casino to really explode. There were a few other ones that sort of fast followed, Double Down, a few other guys, Big Fish, but we were sort of the first out the gate. And at that time, marketing was just like crazy. You could have written Slotomania on $100 bills and thrown them out your window just randomly, and they probably would have been a profitable campaign. So it was a totally different time than what we see today. But yeah,
early times.
Yeah, exactly.
Early times. Well, Adam, you have so many experiences in different companies. We won't dive to each of them, but some key moments out of that 15 plus years, like obviously starting in Playtika, such a giant, is the first step. And then what shaped your career during those times?
Actually, there's a story that I have before Playtika, when I was working in the casino, that was really kind of like a foundational, kind of like core tenet of my kind of philosophy about business. It happened to me. I had a very good friend who was working. He was working in another department. He was actually the person that helped me get the job in Playtika, a guy named Moore Sadra. Shout out. I'm currently sitting on his board in Incremental. So he was working as like the head of media buying, and I was part of the affiliate management team. And he ended up leaving, and then somebody joined the company. And that person, I'm a very friendly person, very outgoing. And so when I saw that person, I said, listen, I've been here a couple of years, like or a bit of time. If you need anything, I'm here. And that person was just never very friendly to me. And, never really gave me the time of day. And I didn't really think much of it, but I knew that they weren't really well liked within their team as well. And I just kind of let it slide. Okay, whatever. Then I joined Playtika. And after about 6 or 7 months, I got a call, and I said, hey, listen, my friend was like, hey, listen, that person that was working in that old company is apparently interviewing to become your boss. And I walked into to Robert's office and said, if you hire this person, I'm going to walk out. I'll quit. Like, I don't want this I don't like that energy. I want basically good vibes in the business. And that's not the kind of person I want. And he was like, okay. So job didn't get taken. They basically passed on her. Then later on, somebody else called me, hey, listen, I know you used to work with this person. What's up with that kind of personality? Then I said, listen, if you want good company culture, they're not the individual to hire. And of course, the story of Playtika is that company went on to create and generate, generational wealth for the people who were in those positions. And the other company was eventually sold as well. And what it taught me was, you always got to be nice to the people around you, because you never know in this industry where people are going to end up. That guy that's your current account manager, they could be the CEO of a new company in 6 months or 2 years. And you could be looking for a job for that person, or, they be funding, or they want you to sit on their board. And so that was something that really kind of helped shape my general business view on, especially in gaming. And I've kind of taken that with me. You see a lot of positions on my profile, and 99% of those were people coming to me and saying, hey, listen, you've got this background. We'd love to have you in the team. Or, hey, Adam, let me introduce you to a friend of mine. He's got this new business. And then I'm like, oh, Moon Active, amazing. Let's talk. Why don't you join our advisory board? And, rest is history.
Be nice to everyone. You never know.
It's not necessarily being nice. It's taking the time. You can be nice to somebody. You can say, hey, what's up? Hey, shake a hand. It's more about that. It's being invested, without the thought that person needs to give you something in return. That's a very American thing. Like, hey, because you were nice to me, I got to be nice to you. Like in Spain, that's less important. If I give you a gift here, I have no expectation that you're going to give me something back. And, I'm going to do it out of just like, I genuinely want you to be happy, or I genuinely care about what you're doing, and I want to help you. That's also a very Israeli thing, by the way. People are always looking out for each other. So that for me is a core component of being successful in business. Having that network that you've cultivated. You're basically as successful as your network for the most part. At least that.
Your network is your network, yeah?
Yeah.
All right. Well, you're an advisor and investor as well. In many companies, I will put your LinkedIn profile when we post this, but when it comes to advisory, we'll talk about the investor part as well. When it comes to advisory, what are why companies come to you, and what kind of advice do they ask from you?
So I think a lot of companies come to me in their kind of early stages. Although, to be fair, I've advised some companies in later stages to guys that are already in like B and C rounds. And I think they come to me for a couple of reasons. I think they're, on the one hand, as I mentioned, my network, somebody's like, hey, you have some issues with marketing, or you want to scale your product. It's usually coming in that vehicle. And what I've done, because I was at the foundational level of a number of companies, I've just seen a lot of things, and I think I don't claim to be the smartest guy in the room by any stretch, but I've watched a lot of really smart people fail a bunch of times. And, I can look at those failures, and I think if I have one superpower, it's that I can connect the dots. I can look at the failure over here, and then I can see the problem that this company's having, and then say, hey, listen, I actually saw that in Gem City, and we had a similar problem, and here's how we solved it. Or we tried to solve it this way and that was a failure. So if that's the direction you're taking, let me save you some time and tell you how that ended up for this business. And so I bring a lot of kind of context, oh, we have this issue, or I want to understand this process. Probably somewhere in my, the cobwebs of my brain, I've seen that happen in another company. So what ends up happening is I take kind of three different approaches. On the one hand, I'm helping with the tactical aspect of the business, right? Oh, you want to launch this product? Okay, who do you go with? What marketing channels? What's your, whatever your reporting, your analytics stack, what kind of product features you're looking for? How do you set up that roadmap effectively? Second one is, helping the CEO, looking at, kind of acting as almost like a coach, a sounding board. Oh, you have this idea. Okay, what are you thinking about? How do you want to scale that business? What's the long-term kind of business proposition, the value? How are you going to generate that? And the final one is external facing. So, if they're looking to raise money, if they're, trying to acquire a business, whatever it might be, or be acquired. So I help kind of create that structure, whether it's introductions to investors, helping create the pitch deck, helping kind of, again, be that sounding board for how you would position your business in whatever industry you're currently in. And I'm pretty agnostic. I've advised clean tech companies, I've advised marketing technology, gaming, all kind of different health tech companies. So it's all pretty much prescriptive, in the context of if you understand how a business works, then you're generally pretty good at putting that knowledge into play across a variety of different industries. So
okay, Mega Studio is not your first company, correct?
No.
When did you start your first company and what happened?
So my first company was when I want to say probably like 12, 11. It was a lemonade and golf ball stand that I had at my house. We used to go to the golf club, go swimming in the water hazards, pick up golf balls, scrub them out, and sell lemonade and golf balls. And my best friend and I, basically that was our summers growing up. And and my parents were both entrepreneurs, and so that they worked for themselves. So I always had this like drive, to work for myself. I didn't get the chance to do that until much later in my life. But when I was right after I left a company called ABA English, I was introduced to a small startup. There were a couple of people just kind of scattered around the globe, and they had a football manager product called Underwood Football Manager, and they were looking for a CEO. And again, through kind of a random connection. Actually, not that random, but through a good connection, somebody that I used to work with, I was introduced to the founder. Ended up taking the position and basically ran the company for 4 years. We ended up raising a small round, but just couldn't, like everything, gaming's a difficult space. Had a good kind of initial push, but then kind of money fell through. Kind of some issues between me and the original founder. Just kind of your typical founder stories, but ended up staying there for almost 4 years, trying to kind of help push the company forward. But in the end, it went the way with, I would say, 95 or 98% of all gaming companies do, which is kind of into the ether, so to speak.
Not the very best message on the on this show, but
well, it's like you learn things, right? I mean, look, I think I've failed way more than I've been successful. I mean, even though you might look at my profile and say, wow, this dude has been part of a lot of really successful companies, and that's true, but I've definitely failed a lot more. There's more days I'm waking up looking at my reports and being like, oh God, last night I spent too much money in the wrong place, than I do feeling like, wow, that was the best day ever. Like ROAS was amazing. Like my company's going to be $1 billion, right? And I think what's important is, as a person kind of grows in this space, is that you really do need to fail, because you only really understand what success means if you're failing as well. And I think if, we're currently in this culture where it's like all about success, you gotta get there, and setbacks are a part of that. And I think it's important that people see that, like, yeah, I failed, I mismanaged money and spent too much in this place, didn't have the right foresight, but I learned from that, I corrected myself. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to set a second company and have that running bootstrap for the last almost 4 years now. So
you only need one time to be right.
Yeah, you only need to be right once. But I think it's one of my favorite things is you see this. It's like what people see in terms of success is this tiny little. They see you now in this moment. What don't see is this like mountain of trial and tribulation that's come, over the last 15, 16 years. And I think obviously that's what we're here to talk about today, but it's important that people understand that it takes a long time. You got to go through a lot of hard work and get knocked down before you're really successful. Very, very few people make it on the first time. Very few. And that's okay.
That's true. We only see the successful ones. We usually, nowadays we kind of see like with all the layoffs and shutdowns, but usually we don't see the ones who are, like just silently going and dying or like closing the company or whatever.
Yeah.
You, Tango Games, July 2021, you finished, and then you started the Mega Studio around April 2021, right?
Yeah.
So with what vision you started Mega Studio?
So I knew that I wanted to make games, and I knew that I wanted to have a studio. And what I also knew was that I had no desire to raise money, at least not at that time. I wanted to come from more of a position of like power, not a power, but of understanding. I'm the kind of person that's like, I like things to be organized and sort of in motion before I look for money. I'm not the kind of guy that feels comfortable, debt finance, like spending to get to this like massive scale. I mean, listen, I'll do it. I've done it a bunch of times, but any VCs that are listening to this, I'm happy to take your money. Like, hit me up. But in general, what I wanted to do was I wanted to create a team that I could actually, that had value for myself. And so luckily I was given the opportunity with a company in Germany who were looking for me they basically said, hey, listen, we'd love for you to set up a studio in Hamburg. And I said, listen, I'm not really interested in Hamburg, but what about Barcelona? And they said, okay, why don't you set up a studio in Barcelona? We'll hire that studio as a work for hire, and you can start making games for us. And I was like, oh my God, this is like match made in heaven. It's gonna help me basically build the business, and it's gonna give me, runway to do it. So that was the first contract. It was pretty successful from a commercial standpoint. I think we made almost 25 games. We spent 3 years with that studio, making tons and tons of games, helping them improve all of their internal products, and from that, it also allowed us to expand, looking into other types of genres of the different types of games. And, today we're, a studio of 20 people. We've got a couple of projects in the works. It's a work for hire studio, so it's ups and downs, but we're slowly trying to pivot now away from work for hire and building our own products. So that's been the kind of, there's been a lot in between the last 3 years, but that was initially the starting point. Was that I didn't want to go out and raise money. I wanted to have some value created before I did that, and that's essentially what we've done.
It was the right time, like starting the studio in Barcelona and making games. So everything you wished for.
Yeah.
How did you come up with the name
Mega Studio?
That's the question in this.
I'm not what you would call like a quiet individual. I'm not a sit in the corner with your head down, just like grinding it out type of guy. I'm like in your face. I think, probably a lot of people think I'm an asshole, very direct. I'm working on that stuff, trying to soften the corner. Spain has definitely humbled me in that respect. Israel, of course, is sort of where I cut my teeth, so to speak, in the industry. So, I wanted something that sort of talked about what we wanted to, like, we're going to get it done. We're going to be in your face, but we're going to get what we're going to deliver to you. It's going to feel like, whoa, like that's impressive. If you look at the logo, it's a loot box, so, that's something that like it can open up. You can have anything can be in there, we can deliver on anything. And I liked the way it sounded at the end of the day. And yeah, it's not that I put a ton of emphasis on the name, but yeah, I always liked the big M, and so that's what I chose.
It makes sense for your personality and what you want to achieve. So
yeah,
it's fine. Adam is a great guy, by the way. Maybe you might be an asshole for many people, but he's a great friend for me. So if you're heading to Barcelona, definitely ping to him. You mentioned the failures. So tell me a few of them. You can start with the biggest one that you're like, okay, this was a massive failure.
The biggest failure. Okay, let me think. I've had a lot of failures. I can give you kind of like, there's been a couple of failures. So probably the biggest failure I had was I worked, now hindsight is always 2020 on these types of topics. But one of the things that you need to do as a CEO, especially if it's your company, right? Which, by the way, is a very lonely position. Even if you have a co-founder, if it's not a 50-50 like direct split, there's always going to be somebody who's in charge. And it's very helpful because that person can, you can say, hey, listen, what do you think about this? But when you're alone, that has implications. Now I have a co-founder in Mega Studio, Ruben, and he and I've worked together for many years. But still, even as I said, even if you have a partner, there's still decisions that you need to take. And I think the biggest failure that I had was that I didn't take a decision fast enough. We were working with a company. That company wasn't paying us. I should have taken the decision on the first month, but there was hey, keep going. We're gonna it's in process, and I was really excited about the opportunity, and so I kind of blinded myself to like what the reality of the situation was. And after around it's like almost 5 months later, I realized, I kind of picked my head up and I realized, holy shit, we've made a big mistake, and ended up costing a lot of money that I basically was my personal money that I put in the business. And that taught me that like you just need to be a little bit more ruthless, especially in the work for hire space. Another big mistake that I made, generally speaking, mistakes tend to revolve around money. I haven't which is okay because no mistake that I made killed somebody. You know what I mean? And sometimes when I'd work for companies, these people would come in, they'd be like, we need this right now. I'm like, sorry, is somebody going to die if this doesn't happen? They're like, no. Okay. Then calm down. Like, just drop the pressure down a little bit because it's not that important. You can always release the next day. But one time this was back when I was in Playtika, I was working I was head of marketing, and I had a campaign that was running. And this company that I was working with had basically just never produced a ton of traffic for us. We're talking about maybe like 400 installs a day, 500 installs a day. And so I never really had a requirement or a need to set a budget cap. Working with the guys, all of a sudden wake up one morning, we've spent $50,000. Now, Playtika, huge company, whatever, but still 50 grand in one day, 1,000% increase on like the best day this company had ever had was like, and I called into the office. He's like, people are like they're just losing their mind. Why wouldn't you have a budget cap? And I'm like trying to explain. I'm like, and by the way, I worked with this company for like 6 or 7 months. It wasn't like it was the first day we'd launched. But positive outcome was A, I always set budget caps unless I intentionally don't. And B, I ended up actually being able to get back some of that money. Actually, a lot of it, about 60% of it back. Because and I still remember the phone call with the guy. He's still, a good friend of mine still today. And he was like, hey man, what do you think of all that traffic we just sent you? Aren't you excited? And I just I'm like, are you effing kidding me right now, dude? Like, you almost cost me my job. Like, I had to go in and like, they wanted to like cut me off for like it was this whole, disaster that I had to avert. He's like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I'm like, why would you do that? Why would you think it would be okay to like, 100x the traffic or whatever? But, again, it led to me kind of taking up more precautions around when I spend. By the way, it's good to fail early in your career. The more you can fail early, the less you fail later. So, I had a lot of like mishaps in those early days, doing things too quickly, not thinking through the decisions that I was making. Luckily, most of them, even if it did kind of blow up in my face, they weren't, catastrophic failures. I haven't actually had any of those. It's typically been when Tenco closed, it was more of like death by 1,000 cuts rather than like some monumental, catastrophic issue that took place.
The story you shared, I'm laughing very hard, but it is very funny if you work in UA or in an ad network, because I have a background in ad network, so I am the guy that you called. Like, oh, how was the traffic? Like, and the guy had a very big commission probably.
Yeah.
So it's a good story. You mentioned something very interesting, like taking the pressure off when there is not that situation. Like, we are always caught up in the deadlines and everything. Like today, like, so today is the 24th of July. I don't know when we'll air this, but I had a similar case in the morning. I was writing to one of my team members about an email. I'm like maybe it could wait a little bit, but I was so excited to await this email, and but you apply the pressure. I mean, there's the deadlines, right? There's the deadlines.
Yeah.
If no one applies pressures, then everyone will miss the deadline. But in the end of the day, when we think about the worst thing, it's like what's the worst thing, right? What is the worst thing this company can have? Like if someone dying, or if someone losing time, or if it's losing money and so on. And another thing you mentioned also is that like most of the failures, when we think about it, it's when we lose the money, right? Because the purpose of the business is making money. So the main mistakes are always about losing the money. Wrong employee, wrong investment, wrong spending. It's just, either it costs time or money. Not like you are losing your health, or I smoked, I lost my health. That's not
Maybe
that's
a
not
bit in the stress category. When you're really stressed out, your immune system shuts down. So there is actually like a correlation between that. But anyway.
True. So that was like a good realization, like for all the founders that, like mistakes, yes, but what is the worst thing that can happen, right?
I wanted to add something in. It's a really interesting graphic that I saw a couple of years ago, probably like maybe 7 years ago. And it showed age versus potential for success of a startup. And so what we're taught in the US especially is, you see the Zuckerbergs, you see the Dorseys, right? You see these guys, the Gateses, the Ellis, like these guys founded these companies really young, right? And they're the people you read about. We have movies about them. We see, there's books about these guys, and yeah, they became fabulously wealthy, but it's much more about like they did it so young, right? You can do it young if you just get out there and you do it, right? And what this graphic showed was that absolutely untrue. The likelihood that you will be successful is directly proportional to how old you are. So the older you are, the more likely you are to be successful in your business. That's because you have more knowledge, you have a better network, you've got access to capital, you're more tempered, right? Like all the things that they say you need as a business person, you need that energy. Oh, it's a young man's game. Total BS. Total BS, right? There's no such thing as a young man versus an old man. What the difference is like the difference between you being able to actually go out and fund that business and to have the wherewithal to understand how that business needs to move forward. That's just not a man, right? It's a person, sorry, but it's coming from experience. And I think that is something that a lot of people don't talk about enough, in my opinion.
This is interesting. When you look at the social media today, because like when you look at the social media today, you see the success case. Oh, Jeff Bezos' morning routine, Mark Zuckerberg's this, how to become a Warren Buffett, like the guy invested in 13 years, I don't know what the age, and then you try to replicate.
He's like 93 years old. Like do the same thing for 60 years, you'll probably be successful at it.
Exactly, consistency. This is a very interesting graph, so it encouraged me. I just turned 33. I know you celebrated your birthday, but I'm not going to tell your age. You look younger, so
I can say
if you want, you can.
So, but I thought a lot about that. When I was turning 40, I was like, man, like I'm getting old. But then I was thinking, like, no, I got like another, like I've been working for what, 17 years, 15, 16 years, something like that. I have another 20, maybe 25 years of like potential work in front of me, right? I've got more work in front of me than I have behind me. Now, it's true. I could retire, I could hit it big, whatever. But at the end of the day, like even if I sell my company, I'm not the kind of guy. I can't just sit on the ground. It's not like I could just go to the gym and just zone out. Like I would invest. I always want to be part of that scene, So I keep having to remind myself, like the majority of your work is still in front of you. So if you think like all this experience you've had for the last whatever, all these companies and crazy experiences, like you're going to have even more of those moving forward. And just don't forget that. I think a lot of people have this like sense, like where I am right now, that's life, or death. Like everything can happen in this like right. No, you're a kid or not. You could be like me. You could be, I know people look at me and they think he's older or he is old, you know, if you're 25, and I'm looking at them and thinking, yeah, but when you get to my position, you're going to be like, I still got double the amount of time to do the things that I'm doing. You know, I haven't even done half of the things that I want to do or I'm going to do.
This is, I mean, nowadays, what I remind myself is nothing is definite until you die. And then when you
They
look
say
at
taxes, death and taxes are the only certainties in life.
exactly. So when you look at your past, this also like one of my motivation. Okay, you did these in like this time, and you have another years until I don't know you're like satisfied with your work and retired. So it gives a great motivation. You are living in one of the biggest gaming hubs, Barcelona.
Yeah.
Tell me about Barcelona's like gaming scene and being there changes how you work or the network wise or capital wise.
Yeah. So I'm going to say something might not be a popular opinion, but I would say that Barcelona as a gaming hub, while there are many studios here, many studios, they are all auxiliary or, you know, parts of other major companies. You know, you've got a office from Scopely. You've got a branch of, you know, Tilting Point. You've got like all of these major studios, of which there are many, Facebook, Google, you know, as I mentioned, Scopely, the list goes on. There are almost no Spanish companies here. Yeah, the one company, Social Point, which was sold to to Take-Two, which was eventually acquired by Activision. So, right. So you've got really no kind of core community here of founders from Spain, not at least in gaming. And what that also translates to is that, you know, when I lived in Israel, whenever there would be a company that was sold, you'd have this like mini exodus. Also in San Francisco, US, all those guys became millionaires, and then they would start their own businesses. That doesn't happen in Spain. So if you look at Social Point, which was like the biggest gaming exit we had here, not a single person from that team, except for me, actually went out and founded another company. At least not that I'm aware of. At least not. That may be untrue because I'm not in touch with everybody, but most people just stayed in the company. Even the founders left and haven't done anything else in gaming. And so what that created was this like massive injection of capital that just never entered into the market. It just stayed with the team. And so actually, I don't find Barcelona to be a particularly good hub for doing business. Now, if I want to set up a company here, it's pretty decent. I mean, regulations, taxes is not the best, but there's now a ton of talent here. You know, I was one of the first kind of foreigners coming in with Social Point, so it's hiring, and it was so easy at that time. You know, people would be talking to guys in the UK, and they'd be telling me I'm on 75K. I was like, cool, I'll pay you 50,000 euros. And they're like, what? That's crazy. I could never. I said, let me just explain, because if 50K, you can have a 150 square meter apartment. You can live like a king, plus you're going to save 1,000 euros a month. Again, this is 2014, a little bit different these days, but you know, that 80K you needed to live in London, you know, you may be saving nothing. Here, you're going to be like, it's going to be a completely different lifestyle. And it worked. And we were able to, I mean, guys like me were coming here. So you get this really solid pool of talent, but that talent doesn't really talk to each other as such. It's not a Spanish culture, you know, thing. People, maybe it's more of a Catalan thing. People are very kind of reserved, closed off. If you and I were to meet in a bar, we would not talk about work. If we're both Catalans, we wouldn't talk about work. It's just not a topic of conversation, especially between people that don't know each other. So while it's a great place to live, it's not a great place to do business, if I'm completely honest, compared to, for instance, going to Tel Aviv. You know, if I meet you first day, first minute, you're telling me what you do, and I'm like, I'm going to introduce you to my brother, sister's cousin's uncle's nephew, also doing what you do. He's investing as well. I'm like, WhatsApping, create a group. Then you call me the next day, yo, Moti and I just sat down. He's going to co-found with me this business. You know, that's what happens. And on the one side, that's great. You know, it's a real coming together. You always bring people together, and that industry is moving. But what you also lose in that is your life, which is what Spain is great at, right? It reminds you that, like, hey, business isn't everything. And as long as you're moderately successful, you can still have a really great life. And I think that's why people live here. So, you know, take it how you want to. But I recommend it, but it's not for everybody.
The other day I had a vermouth, and this is something I got used to in Barcelona. Like, okay, in middle of the day, at 2 glasses of vermouth. Okay, the life looks better, and yeah, the business can wait a little longer. Not much hustling culture. I understand right now. Yeah, like Israel is obviously a nation of founders, so many unicorns. It's in the culture, right? Like these super cities, like I don't know, San Francisco, I think Istanbul, Turkey is one of them right now, especially in the gaming. Like the exit part that you mentioned, like I don't know what happened after the exit of Peak, as like if the people had the shares to start, but most of the ex Peak employees.
I think Dream is ex-Peak. I think who's the guy?
Yes, founders, but the ex-Peak employees has a like more massive network than like the people who did the exit got money, because most of the people who started like Peak spiked.
Well, I don't know. I mean, in for example, in Spain, getting equity is like unheard of, right? First of all, it's not equity. There's no equity plan in Spain. You have what's called a phantom share, which I didn't even know about, which is absolutely ridiculous. But what it is basically you just get a bonus, which comes out as salary, which sucks because you get taxed at like whatever insane rate it is, 45%, if it's a decent exit, versus founder shares. Like there are capital gains in Spain, like 21%. And I think this is important, coming back to kind of like where you set up your company, that's like a big deal. And in today's environment, you don't always need to set it up in the country that you're living in. Even if you're a resident or a citizen, it might not be the best place. Spain is definitely not the best place if you're trying to build a company where your whole kind of vision is like, I'm going to get a lot of people together. I'm going to give everybody equity. Like we're all going to kind of grow. No, it doesn't work that way. It's very complicated to get investment here, and the taxes are super fucking high. So, if you're a European resident, then you might think, hey, Ireland, low tax rate, especially, things, look for places where they're more kind of, they give startups a break, Spain doesn't do that. There's one area, the Basque region in the north, which is doing some stuff within the entertainment space. Gaming's not part of that. They give like a big tax rebate, which is actually significant. So a lot of companies are moving up there, but gaming doesn't fall into that place. You obviously have the US with Delaware, easy to set up these companies. So I think when you're setting up a studio, you're setting up a business, that's something that I'm always, thinking about that a lot. How do you hire? Today's market sucks. Hiring and firing happens really quickly and the market can turn sour very fast. And if you're holding employees in a country that you're also a resident of, then you're probably paying taxes for those people, and you'll probably need to pay severance in certain cases. I know that I had a situation where, I basically, you couldn't fire the person because it was too expensive to fire them. And it was also too expensive to keep them on. So you had to like sit there like, do I use all the money I have in my bank account to fire this individual, or do I keep paying them? You have to take into consideration.
So overall, the Barcelona is like good place to branch out and access the talent there, because a lot of people actually like to move there and live there. Also, as a founder perspective, if you want to have like a work-life balance, which I don't know which founder is okay with that, which would be very difficult, but it's a great place for that as well. All right. What's the future for Mega Studio?
Well, we've got a game that's going to soft launch next week, 2 weeks, which will be awesome. I'll make a little post about it. But I think the future for us is self-publishing, right? We've got a product in the market right now in the rewarded gaming space. So games where players can earn real money. So we've had that live for about a month and a half now, and starting to optimize it, trying to get it's starting to kind of build steam, build a little bit of traction. And I think that's the direction, at least for the moment. I see the space, and I realized that, and I realized this a long time ago. I sat on the boards of both gaming companies and media companies, and the media companies always seemed to have it easier. They had more data, had more information, and so that's kind of the direction I want to take the business. I want to kind of get into a space that I still think that there's a bit of a blue ocean. That window might be closing, but I think there's still a big opportunity. And I think that opportunity continues to grow as companies become more privacy centric. So I'm not going to get too much into it, but the idea is around how do you basically improve your targeting in an environment where it's very difficult to acquire information. So yeah, we'll see. There'll be some news coming out of the business in the next couple of months. So
yeah.
Fingers crossed.
And what advice would you give to anyone who will start a game company right now?
Don't do it. That's not a good time.
Everyone says that.
If it's something you're really passionate about, that's good. But there's something about gaming which I always try and make sure people understand, which is that this isn't an art. It's a business. And if you love games and you're like, I play games all the time, that doesn't mean that you're going to make a successful product. In fact, it probably means you'll make a game that you want to play. And yeah, you might be a great tester of your own product, right? But there's a high likelihood that that product will not be successful long term if you're making it for yourself. And so I think when somebody's like, I want to do this, you got to make sure you got a good team around you of professionals who understand and who can guide that. You may be that person too, by the way. Yeah. It's helpful to make sure you have a great team, because if you're looking for investment, nobody invests in games. They invest in teams. And that's something that a lot of people don't really realize. Like, I have this great idea. I came from King, yada, yada, da, da, da. And my first question is always, okay, great idea. Don't really care so much. Tell me about your team. Oh, we had this guy from here and here and here. And like, cool. What did they actually do in those positions? Were they there for 6 months or a year and basically just were a gopher, go for this, go for that? Or were they like, instrumental in creating features and understanding, whatever monetization, ROAS, whatever it might be? Those are people you need to surround yourself with, because making a game is really, really fucking hard. Sorry. It's really easy to make a game, but to make it work is incredibly difficult and takes a ton of time, and you really need to understand mechanics and how things link together. It's not for the faint of heart. So good luck.
I feel like this was the final question, but whoever I asked this question, they say like, don't. I'm like, I might skip this question from now on, but I guess that is the reality when it comes to the current market condition. Plus, obviously, entrepreneurship is not for everyone. It's just another road in life. Resilience, perseverance, whatever thing you call it. There are so many aspects. It's been discussed that if the games are like art, it's a form of art. But in the end, if it doesn't make money, so you just created a piece of art and no one will look at it or buy it. So that's also one perspective. Well, Adam, thank you so much for coming to show. This was great. And one final thing, Adam will be on our conference on 15 and 16 of October in Istanbul. If you'd like to meet him, definitely buy your ticket and be there. Thank you so much, Adam.
You're welcome. Have a great day.